So as we get started, first of all, ladies, I want to say good evening and thank you for being with us. I am going to take you through a little bit of a presentation, but it's really a dialogue and interaction for us to talk about how disciplined women finish wealthy. And it all starts with budgeting as our foundation and ground level. So if you all can see the presentation, everyone can still see?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and why budgeting is so important to me. I mentioned last time where I'm from. I talked about how I'm one of five children. So you can imagine what my mother had to do in budgeting for having a family of this size. I am divorced. I have one adult son. And I started with those aspects because as women, we know sometimes we're thrown curveballs as we go on throughout our careers, our personal lives, etc. And budgeting is a critical component to ensuring that our families remain financially healthy, that we can prepare for the future, looking towards retirement, and also having a little fun, enjoying life. I graduated from Spelman with a Bachelor of Arts in Economics, and then I went on to the Harvard Business School and got my MBA. My first career was actually in finance. So I'm a person who loves the numbers. I like seeing how different models can work together or work for and against you, I will say. In addition to that, I've run a private equity fund managing commercial real estate with about 2 million square feet across the country. And I am now president of my own firm. We've been in business for about 20 years. So I know you all were working with Tanita on that business canvas. And I continue to update mine on a regular basis just from having been in business that long. So as we get started, I'm going to review some of the things that we talked about before. But before we do, can you start warming up the chat for me and just letting me know why budgeting is important to you? I mentioned a couple of reasons why for me. One being a single mom at a particular time, being divorced, and also coming from a large family. If there are things that strike you for a budgeting standpoint, could you let me know by dropping those in the chat?
Adrienne, we do have one attendee who mentioned that as a single mom of three children, budgeting is important.
Okay, excellent. So we have that in common. So let's talk just about a few of the budgeting basics. I'm going to run through these very quickly. Number one, only a third of Americans maintain a household budget. So even though we have these great goals, we don't seem to want to budget just from an American standpoint. And that, of course, can be problematic. 30% of Americans also have long-term financial plan that includes saving and investment goals. So you may ask, why is it so important to budget? Number one, identifying how your money patterns work are important so that you know what behaviors to enforce and not. We talked about this session really being about discipline, financial discipline, and it really means repetition, repetitive, rep, repetitive behaviors so that you can implement these things in your life on a long-term basis. That also helps you achieve your financial goals. It helps you be more conscientious of how you handle money so that you don't end up overspending. It also assists you in how you improve your ability to pay off your credit card debt if you have any, and also begin to think about allocating more to save. It gives you better control of your finances so you can allocate more savings to your investments. And it gives you an awareness of the essential financial discipline. Um, I know most of you know that the most wealthy billionaires in this country actually started out with significant budgeting. And the methods that they did, if you think about John D. Rockefeller, is they budgeted down to the penny, which is where some of the bean counting lingo came into practice. So again, when we think about the discipline, the word discipline, it's the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment to correct disobedience. In our financial planning, we know that there are consequences when we don't have that discipline. I want to think about that for just a minute. And again, using the chat, what happens when we're not disciplined when it comes to our money? I shared just this picture of a young lady here. She's opening her wallet and it's empty. Are there other things that you all can think about when we aren't disciplined when it comes to financial management? What are some of those consequences that we face?
So Adrienne, you have lots of conversation in the chat.
Okay.
So everything from stress and feeling broke, discipline. If you are disciplined, then you can prioritize.
Yes.
And if you're not, then you are more likely to overspend and have more bills than you have money.
Those are great. And ladies, we also can think about, the very, very grave consequences, which could be becoming homeless, right? Not being able to provide for your children, being hungry. Some of those things also come into account when we think about having a lack of discipline, buying that extra pair of shoes when you know you couldn't afford it, right? And how that puts us off into negative situations. So there are definitely consequences when we're not disciplined. But what does it also look like when we are? What are some of the goals that you may have when you are a good steward of your money and have good financial discipline? This picture just shows that you may take vacations. You may be able to pay for your children's college education. If you run into a medical situation, you're able to cover that. Buying a house, which is what we're all looking forward to for those that don't own it. And I want you to tell me whether or not you own a house or not by placing that in the chat, but also preparing for your retirement with that pension. So as you all think long and hard about what your goals are financially, you're in this session for a reason. Can you share with me some of the reasons why or what your long-term financial goals are? And if you have some short-term goals as well, please share those. And for those that are actually looking to purchase a home, to become a first-time homeowner or step up into new home ownership, would you please let me know that in the chat as well?
So Adrienne, we're happy to report that we have some homeowners and we have people in the audience, ladies in the audience who are renting. And several people have denoted the importance of home ownership is also generational wealth.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's excellent, ladies. That is excellent. So let's look at what we're going to cover. We have a couple of times to be together. Tonight, we're going to really focus on budgeting basics, but we're going to take it a layer deeper. We're going to understand what budgeting components are, income versus your expenses, your budgeting methods. We're going to take you through several of budgeting methods. And then the next time that we're together, we'll begin to break down even further how you need to start tracking and managing your budget to accomplish and achieve those wonderful goals that you have set for yourselves. So let's get started.
Adrienne, can I share some wonderful chats that you have?
Yes, please.
So I'm excited to report that in today's or this evening's session, we have some first-time homeowners and we have people who are here to glean and to learn from you some of the very strategic ways in which to budget so that they can own a home And there's someone who just mentioned that even their short-term goal is one, to increase the amount of money in their account to $1,000, for example, and
Perfect.
to increase their credit score as well.
Okay, that's perfect. And ladies, I think that all of us can attest to, we go through these cycles, right, in our lives. So sometimes we're great stewards of our money and we budget well, whatever method we come up with. And other times we kind of fall off. Sometimes that looks like, we're underwater because of a change in career. And other times it's like we're doing so well, we just take our eye off the ball. Okay. So we're going to give you some things, some tips and tools that you can actually use. Let me start with a couple more statistics. Number one, 65% of Americans don't even know what they spent their money on last month. 65%. So if you are someone currently using a budget, why don't I tell me who's in here that currently uses a budget so you know where your money is going? And while you all are thinking about that, do you know where your money went last month? And for another third of Americans, it's you regret how much you spent last month because now that it's time 30 days later to look at paying the bill, you may not have all that you need. So if you fit into either of those categories, what we're going to go through is going to be very appropriate. There are 4 different budget components, and we're going to review each of these in fairly good detail tonight. Number 1 is net income. 2 are fixed expenses. 3, flexible expenses. And then 4 are your discretionary expenses. And we added something in here because a lot of trainings, I will say, they forget that we all want to retire, right? We all want to sit on the beach one day. And we don't talk enough about how do we include savings and investments in the overall budgeting process so that as you become that person that can easily pay your bills, we need to make sure that our thought process is including savings and investments almost as an additional expense that is on autopilot. So let's get going and understanding the first component of budgeting. And I'm going to ask you all to pull out paper and pen because we're going to go through some of the math and I'm going to go slow so that you can get the math because this piece is very important. There are a lot of people who make money, but they don't really understand the ins and outs of even their top line income. So we start with our gross income, we subtract out deductions, and then we end up with our net pay. Okay. And we're going to go through this in a little bit of detail just so that we can be more in tune with how to pay attention to this. Number 1, what you take home, your paycheck, is your income. Any part-time work, as Tanita again was talking about, I don't know how many business owners we have on the call, but I believe everybody should have a side hustle, whatever it is. So that freelance work would also go in to be included in your net income, child support that you may receive, and any rent that you have. So those that own a home, maybe you have a duplex, you live in one side and you're renting out the other side, that is going to be considered your gross income. If you look in the middle of the slide here, we have mandatory deductions from our government. So you have Social Security, you have Medicare, federal income tax, all those FICA and all those acronyms that we see that are always in our pocket. Those are the deductions that are coming out of your gross income. And after you subtract all of those, including any garnishments or child support payments that you may have, you also may have some voluntary deductions coming directly out of your paycheck. It could be your retirement plan. It could be your insurance, disability insurance, health insurance, okay, or health insurance programs. All of those account for deductions that are going to get you to your net income level. So your net income is really what you bring home, and it looks very different from when you sign that first contract, right, at your job. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the math, and then we're going to go together through a worksheet. So the math is your gross pay, which we just talked about, and that's just the salary that they've identified for you. And then I have a multiplier here times 70%, 0.70 to equal your net pay. So in the examples that we're going through, you may already know what your tax basis is, but I'm using a 30% tax basis for deductions to come off the top. So if you're making 50,000 a year in gross pay, multiply that by 70%, excuse me, your take home pay that you really have to use is 35,000. Okay. Does everyone get that piece so far? Everybody with me?
Yes.
Very good. If you take that 35,000 and divide it by 52 weeks, you're going to get your weekly pay and multiply that times 4 to get your monthly pay that you now have to cover your bills. So to go through that math again, we're going to do just a little bit of a scenario here. And we're going to call this example Claudina. Okay. Claudina makes $65,000 a year. Claudina is a professor. Okay. She's an assistant professor making $65,000 a year. I'm not going to name the institution. Claudina's taxes are 30%. That 30% goes to other people that are not related to her in any way. And they are receiving $19,500 from her check. Okay. So Claudina has $45,500 or 70% of her pay, her gross pay, to bring home. When she does the calculation of how much she would have in a week to take home, it's $875. Okay. And this is important because, some people are paid weekly. So from a budgeting standpoint, it helps you to adjust and pay for the things that you need first with that $875 a week. But for those like Claudina, who is in higher ed, she only gets paid monthly. Okay. So every month, Claudina receives $3,500 to manage her household. Okay. Claudina has been a great steward. She has been left a home that she's able to rent out. And so she receives an extra $100 a month from a tenant that she has. The home that she inherited still has a mortgage on it. So she's only able to bring in an extra $100 a month to add to her $3,500 that she receives from her job. In addition, Claudina has a little side hustle, and her side hustle is tutoring. So with that tutoring, she's been able to bring in just an additional $150 a month to add. So with that extra $250 to her $3,500, she's bringing home $3,750 a month. Everybody with me?
Yes.
Everybody with me with Claudina?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This is now where you get to work on your own activity. I want you to take just 2 to 3 minutes, add in your gross annual income, go through your taxes and just use 30 unless you know it. Some people use 26. I was just using round numbers. And go through this exercise and let me know when you're finished. Let me know where you come out. And this is where in the chat, we can put amen once you have it. But I want you to test out the math longhand. Just take 2 minutes. If you get stuck, let me know and I can walk you through it. You can come off mute.
Yes, ladies, as Adrienne just mentioned, we do have a few people who've already said amen. So if you'd like, you are welcome to come off mute and to chat it up with us, if you are able to do so. If not, I will be happy to unmute you if you're interested in dialoguing. So just let me know and I will attempt to unmute you.
Okay, well, hi, Kathaleena. This is Diane Henry. All I have to say, I know I put amen there because I recently retired in December, so I've already had
Amen.
I've had my meeting, so I know what my money is going to be. But retirement income is of course different from when you were working income, so I will have to come up with a new budget. Long story about why they haven't paid me yet, but anyway, it's coming. So so I already know, what to, expect. I, like I said, I don't know when it'll come, but I do know, what to expect. And I know that I have to, kind of, rebalance the books to make sure that I, can still stay, you know, um, above water. I am a caretaker. My daughter is autistic and she's an adult. So, I have to factor, what she needs into the budget as well. But so far, I mean, I have a positive outlook on it for sure.
Excellent. Diane, thank you so much for sharing that. And what we're going through today gives you the basic line items, but as a lot of us are probably in the sandwich generation, either you have kids or you're caregiving, you have additional expenses that will not be reflected on this worksheet, but definitely add those in as you go through your budget. Thank you for that example. Okay. I'm going to go on to our next slide. So we understand what we're bringing in. And I know, again, Tanita helped you with if you need to make more money than what you're bringing in, developing a business plan to help you get there. Understanding the next two components of our budget, we have fixed expenses and flexible expenses, and they are different. And I want to make sure that we all understand the distinction between the two. And there are more that I want to hear from you that you may have to include in your budget. So, with your fixed expenses, these are all the things that you need. They are necessities that are fixed, they're the same amount every single month. Okay. So, your rent shouldn't fluctuate, should be the same every single month. Your mortgage, however, could be fixed or it might be variable. So it could change month to month, quarter to quarter, semi-annual, or annually. So that one could go in either one of these two buckets. Your car payment should be stable. And then the insurance that you pay. Those are all fixed expenses. Okay. On your flexible expenses, these are also things that you need to have. Your groceries, your bill may fluctuate, week to week, month to month. Your gas, your other utility bills, clothes, you may not go out and buy every single month on your clothes, so that will vary. So that's the second component that you just need to start thinking about. On your flexible expenses, it's easy to pull the lever to reduce it or ramp it up as you need to. Not so easy on utility bills, but now if you're with Georgia Power, you can do level billing. And with level billing, you know exactly what you're going to pay every month, and every year they will adjust it. So if it was lower than what you were paying each month, it'll go down for the next year versus just paying the exact amount. And this is good, especially nowadays with global warming. The bills go up and down. Sometimes we have excruciating heat in the summertime where you're really just running the air a lot. And in the winter, sometimes we have those really, really cold spells. So that level budgeting for your utilities help you out when it comes to your budget. The other categories are discretionary expenses. And I have this plus bonus savings. Your discretionary expenses are the things that you really want to spend money on: going to the movies, eating out, all those subscriptions that you have, maybe for Netflix, the gym, or any gifts that you're giving to other people. There are other areas for discretionary income if you want to take a vacation. So again, going back to your dreaming about what your long-term financial goals are. If you're dreaming about retirement, the plus savings piece is because you should treat how much money you want to put away in your out of your discretionary income or your discretionary expenses to include in this portion of your budget component.
So Adrienne, if I can hop in at this time in the
Yes.
chat area, there are some comments regarding how increases in prices have impacted budgets. So while we recognize the difference between fixed expenses and variable expenses and discretionary expenses, inflation has caused things like gas for your car and cost of groceries to go up. And how
are you?
That is so true. And so this is why I want to go back to this slide. The savings component, we have something that a lot of folks use, and it's called an emergency bucket. Okay. Some people say that the philosophy is that you should have 6 months worth of your income saved for a rainy day. And it could be for a recession. It could be because you were laid off. It could be because you decided to say deuces to your current employer and look for another opportunity. So as you're going through your budgeting process, there are always going to be things that hit us out of the blue that we cannot control. But if you're thinking off the bat about having savings, and underneath savings, you would have an emergency bucket, that's where you would be able to draw down so that you're not over your budget, as you look at it for annual basis or overall. And hopefully you'll be able to weather the storm as long as that takes place. That's a great question. Okay. So let's go into these 5 different budgeting methods. I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these. And at the end, just stay in tune with it, because you may already be using one of these methods, but you never put a name on it. Or you may see yourself in one, but know that it's probably time for you to begin shifting towards another methodology. Okay. So there are 5 that we really acknowledge. There are probably 7 altogether. One is zero-based budgeting. And it's good for if you're tracking consistent income and expenses. So there's a lot of, when I mentioned John D. Rockefeller and the bean counters, this is where if you are not a very disciplined person, that might be the one for you. Okay. Pay yourself first budget is the second one. And that's good for people that are prioritizing savings and debt repayment. So if you have high debt, that's one that you might want to start considering. The envelope system budget. And I always laugh and say this is the one that our grandmothers used back in the day, or you may have used jars if you've been teaching your kids how to do budgeting, things like that. But it's making your spending a lot more disciplined where you actually see it. And it's not that different from zero-based budgeting. And we'll go through the reasons why in a little bit. The 50-30-20 budget method, this is the one that is recommended for the majority of folks because it encompasses all the different areas, but it's categorizing your needs versus your wants. So what do I really need versus what I want? And I think we need to look at it as, what do I need in the short term or need in the long term versus what I want? Because we have to begin sacrificing immediate gratification for those long-term goals that we want to have. I want to be like Diane and be able to retire comfortably. And so it requires looking at your budget a little bit differently. The no budget it's an opportunity, and it's good for lowering and avoiding debt. Okay, so it is an actual budget method, and we'll talk about why in just a minute. So looking at these just based on what it's good for, can you put in the chat or open up your mic and let me know which ones you think you currently use and why, or where you may be shifting before we go through the detail.
So Adrienne, while we wait on others, I will confess that I use more than one of these methods. And I do so for a few reasons. So for example, the envelope system budget, I actually use that for my end of year property taxes. And let me tell you why. Because I actually use it as a teachable moment for my homeschool son. And so we know how much our property taxes will be at the end of the year, for example. Let's say $3,000. So what I do is every month I take that 3,000 divided by 12, and every time I get paid, I physically go to the bank, take that exact amount of money out and put it in an envelope.
Excellent.
And the reason why I do that as a teachable moment is because at the end of the year, in December, when I have to pay that 3,000, I literally give it to our 16-year-old. He goes to the tax office with $3,000 of cash in hand, and he pays it. And then we had this conversation all the way home about how it is that we just had to give up 3,000 cash dollars that we worked hard for, but had to give it up. So it's a really interesting teachable moment, because when you do everything electronically and automated, you don't get a chance to feel your money. And I think that more people should get an opportunity to feel their money as opposed to transferring it from one electronic account to another, because you may never get a chance to feel it. And with the advent of a debit card, which you might want to talk about, because there was a time when you went to the bank once a month, and when that cash was gone, you were done.
That's right.
With the advent of the debit card, people are swiping for Starbucks and they're swiping for bubble gum when they don't realize that they're actually spending quadruple amount of money that they otherwise would.
That's right. That's right. Kathleen, I love that. I love that, because as we are going through this session, learning how to budget, think about it differently, it's a great teaching moment for our children. And so I think that system is outstanding. Thank you for sharing that. Was there anyone else?
I'd like to share, if you can hear me. This is Tanika.
Yes.
I use the blend of 1 and 2, and sometimes 5. I try everything, including what I can afford to save monthly. But if I use a credit card to say purchase an asset or something for myself, some furniture that I might need, just so I can use my credit wisely and build my credit score, I will then turn around and pay it down so that my utilization doesn't go past 30%, and I can keep my score where I want it to be, while also avoiding too much debt.
That was Tanita, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's excellent. And I know that we're not really talking about credit in this session, but that is spot on, because as everyone is looking to become a homeowner, that utilization of 30% is important. American Express is your best friend because they keep you honest. You spend it, you pay it off. And it's different than a debit card, because debit cards, they're not tracking your credit worthiness by that debit card. So thank you for that. Okay, well, let's go through. Tanita, you said you use about 3 or 5. You try all of them at different times. We're going to focus on zero-based budgeting, and let's talk just a little bit about the characteristics of zero-based budgeting. So simplistically, it's your income, that net income that we discussed, minus all of your expenses, and everything has to balance to 0. And if you look over to the right where I have the chart, anything that doesn't balance to 0, you can fill it with a miscellaneous. Okay, so that the top line equals the bottom line. It's excellent for tracking your income and expenses, especially if you don't know where the dollars are going. So I started asking, do you know where your dollars are going every month? Kathaleena brought up a great point. Now that you use a debit card or sometimes even a credit card, we lose sight of what we're spending money on. I have a phenomenal bonus son now. And, he started out the school year with a certain amount of money on his card and in his bank account. And we're not finished with the year. We were just starting out, second semester, and he's out of money, but didn't know where it went, how he spent that much, any of that. And so now having him use a budgeting app to track each week and reviewing it with him on the weekends, it helps to really know where your dollars are going. It also helps to build that financial discipline that we talked about in the very beginning, so we can all end up being wealthy at the end. So this is for people who have a set income and they can reasonably estimate their monthly expenses along with their income. So as you calculate, if we just take this example over here on the side, we're still with Claudina. Claudina has her $3,500. She has her side gig for $250, making $3,750 a month. Her housing expenses are $1,200. Okay. Utilities $300, her savings $500 that she's putting away. She has some debt payments on credit cards that are $500. Her insurance, groceries, eating out, entertainment, medical, clothing, miscellaneous is the filler. That is your zero-based budgeting methodology that you go through. Are there any questions there?
No questions there. So far, the chat looks good. We do have, again, some people who mentioned that they do, for example, a combination of, let's say, 2 or 3. So great example.
Very good. Let's go on. So this is the budget method 50-30-20 rule. And if you haven't used this, I highly recommend it in the combination of those that you use. So this one takes percentages. So 50 represents 50%, 30%, 20%. And the breakdowns are you're spending 50% on what you need, have to have. 30% is going to your wants, and 20% is going towards savings, investments or retirement, or towards your debt, which is your credit card payments. Okay. So we already talked about what your needs are. Sometimes people get them confused, what a need versus a want really is. So we'll take you through that in just a minute. But your wants, you see the streaming services, etc. It's definitely making sure that if you are in the practice of teaching someone else how to budget, this is a great thing. Now, it might be unrealistic for people that have a lot of debt. If you have a lot of debt and it's over 20% and you have to begin paying down the debt in order to get in this target level, you may want to choose a different method. Okay. Or if you are looking towards retirement, you don't have a lot of debt. Kids are out of the house now, right? You don't have as much for those expenses. You may want to shift a higher percentage to savings that would exceed the 20% level. Okay. So the good thing about this is the 50-30-20 is customizable. Your percentages just might change. Some people do a 40% on, their needs as those things have changed. And then the 60% goes to the other categories. Are there any questions on the 50-30-20 rule before we go through an example?
There are no questions in the chat just yet.
All right. So let's start out with, we're still rocking with Claudina. I just like her. So her needs are $1,875 a month. Her wants are 1125. That would equate to the 30%. And her savings and debt are 20%. Okay. And you may want to uncouple, right? Savings versus debt, because they work opposite one another, right? So you may want to start thinking about, how do you unbundle those to get your savings higher, or, pay off a higher debt ratio. So on the right, what you see is we just started identifying, based on those expenses, what are her needs and what are her wants. And I want you to just take a second for me and let me know if you believe these are categorized correctly.
I think clothing could be a want for sure.
Clothing could be a want, but hers is only $75. So I'm gonna say Claudina's doing all right. It probably is a need, right? But do you need it every month?
No,
You don't. You don't need to spend money on clothes every month. And I know most ladies, we probably have every season for 5 different years, maybe even a decade in our closets. So that's one that definitely could be adjusted. Any other thoughts on these other categories, how they may sway one way or another?
Let me have a conversation around utilities. I know that we have to pay utilities, our lights and our electricity, but someone like me who's frugal in the summer months, while somebody might need to turn on their air conditioning, I see that as a want, and so I don't turn mine on to save money. So that might alter.
I'm gonna give you that. Most of us want that air. But I hear you, Kathaleena. That is true. You can. I spend time both here and in Los Angeles, and it is definitely true. The windows can be up in the evening to catch the breeze. Folks in Florida can do the same thing, and I think you could probably do the same thing in Georgia if you felt safe enough and that you could catch that breeze. That's a good example. What about insurance, ladies?
I was thinking that depending on the type of insurance.
Yes, depending on the type of insurance. And this is where annually you really should go through and do an assessment on your insurance needs. One, because state policies, state legislative guidelines change all the time. And unless you're just following what's going on at the Capitol, your minimum may go up or it could go down. Okay. And that's everything from your car insurance, your home insurance. You should always go and do quotes every single year on your home owner's insurance. Make them work for your business. And don't just leave your policies with one provider every year for 30 years, for example, when it comes to your home. Okay, so insurance is a good one that you could definitely adjust over time. Also, if you have riders, a lot of us have insurance riders, whether it's for jewelry or some luxury items that you may have, over time, again, reviewing those policies. Do you still need those things? Okay, or have you even gotten rid of them and just never updated your policy to lower that amount, that premium? The next method is the pay yourself first method. So we'll talk just a little bit about those characteristics. First of all, it's a simple budgeting method, okay? And you're focused primarily on savings and debt repayment. So in the previous example, the 50, 30, 20, where we talked about that 20% may need to be larger than 20% because you have higher debt or you want to save more, this might be a better method for you to use because you're prioritizing what you want for savings versus your debt repayment. We talked about how there are always rainy days, right? And we want to ensure that every every month you have a minimum of $1,000 if you have not hit your 6-month requirement for savings. Okay. And that's your emergency fund. So for each month, you want to set aside a specific amount that you're using to pay off. If you have a lot of debt, you know about prioritizing your high interest rate debit or credit cards first to make sure that you pay those off, and then applying and taking that money to the next card to begin whittling down that overall amount that you owe that credit card company. So this one is best for someone if you struggle with, saving, setting aside money to save, or with paying off your debt, because paying the minimum, we know it'll take you 30 years in some cases to actually get it down. This would be a great method for you to use. Any questions on this? Because I know as a recent graduate from graduate school, I used this method because I wanted to make sure that my student loans were paid off as quickly as possible. So when I took my first position out of business school, back then, we were getting signing bonuses. And I took that entire signing bonus and paid off my graduate school, a portion, not all of it, a portion of my graduate school debt, so that I could make sure that I stayed on track, because I was focused on becoming a homeowner sooner versus later.
So Adrienne, we do have persons in the audience who are online who did mention that they're happy that you chatted about saving, because in some scenarios they have higher debt, but they also want to save. And so these are good examples.
Very good. So let's go back to the envelope system for budgeting. So this is another tactic. You see the picture over here. You take your envelopes at the beginning of the month. You write what the expense is for that month. You go to the bank, you get cash, and you put it in each of your envelopes. Once you spend the money in that envelope, that's it. There's no cross-pollination. So if you didn't spend all that you had in the envelope for gas that month, you don't take it and put it on something else. Not that month. Okay, so the risk is you don't want to raid your other envelopes. This method is really for teaching the discipline that's needed to address all of your expenses.
And Adrienne, you might want to chat that there are also other risks, like someone coming in your house,
Yes.
breaking in your home, or you might even have a guest who is a close friend or family member who sees an envelope in your house on your desk and will take it as well.
That's right. A lot of us remember, having these envelopes for the Christmas money, where you'd put aside, waiting to pay for whatever the gifts were going to be for that Christmas. But thank you for mentioning those other risks.
Adrienne, just a time check. We are now at 7:47. And of course, you've been doing your activity along the way. So just wanted to give you a time check so that we will have ample time to do the evaluation and
The giveaway
of the gift card. So just a heads up, you're doing great.
Well, this is the last method that we have, which is the no budget method. And it doesn't mean don't do anything, right? That's not what it means. This is for people who aren't really concerned. They know they have enough money to cover their expenses. They're lowering and avoiding debt altogether because their method is to use their debit card. So you're not going to be overdrafted on your debit card. So they're somewhat disciplined. They keep an eye on their balance pretty much online. So for the newer generation, this is kind of how they operate, right? They just check things online as they go. if they have the discipline. You also may set up recurring billing to hit your account. Okay, you set aside some cash for your extra debt payments if you have them, and you spend what's left over without overdrawing your account. So you do it kind of all in your head. I put here as an example, Mint is a great app to use. It'll track all of your expenses as you go, but you must have the spending discipline so that you're not concerned about overspending. So just as a question, I'm going to ask, which method is for you? And based on these numbers, if you can put the numbers in the chat, just want to, out of curiosity, Kathaleena, see how many combinations we have or a single type that is put out there.
We're waiting.
Are you a zero-based budget gal? Pay yourself first, envelope system, 50, 30, 20.
All right, one person said definitely number 3.
Okay.
The second person online said a combination of 1 and 2. Another attendee or participant says, I used to be a 4.
The person that used to be a 4, tell us why you're no longer a 4.
Well, it's me again. And because my income changed. I mean, it's changed dramatically. So, where I was able to do some watch every penny kind of thing, I gotta kind of rein it in and figure out, another way. I think I said that earlier. I've got to figure out a different method of budgeting. What I have, what I'm expecting. Because there was a lot more. There was bottom line was a lot more leeway in the pre-retirement, I'll say that like you.
Let me add this.
Sorry, I'm here. Go ahead.
There you go. Okay. So Diane, what I was going to say is you may still be a 4 because remember the 50, 30, 20 is customizable, right? So your percentages, it's really about what are your percentages, needs versus wants. And so your percentages may change and be adjusted. And for those that are on the call, for example, if you're saving, right, for a home, there we know that, in order to be underwritten for a house, you can't have more than probably 28% of debt going, or 28% of your expenses going toward your home, or paying your rent would be the test if you're a renter. So I think that the methodology could still work for you. It's just that your percentages are going to change. 50, 30, 20 is a target, but you have to adjust it for what works best for you. And it's probably a good combination to use 4 and 2. Any other comments, Kathleen?
No, that's it. That's what we have so far. Oh, one person did mention just simply the importance of paying yourself first, and that the no budget method is the one that works best for her. And again, another person just put it in the chat. Christy says a combination of 2 and 3. And thank you, Diane. She mentioned that she'll be debt free in about 6 months, except for her mortgage. So she may even go to a 5.
Yes, indeed. Yes. And the closer, what you'll find is people that are closer to retirement are typically in the 5 budget category. No kids, house almost paid for, no other debt is perfect for number 5.
So Adrienne, are there any books that you can share? And we can always share. We do have the roster of the pre-registrants. So if there are any books that you want to share or resources, we would love to send those out more broadly, or when we stop
Yes.
sharing, you can drop it in the chat if you like.
I will do that. I will, and we also have a resource guide. We're going to send you that spreadsheet that we did just so that you can play around with the numbers because it's already programmed in. Put your own scenarios in. But today we wanted to do the breakdown for the details of managing your budget and understanding what those budget categories are. As we go into our next session, we're going to talk about, tracking and managing your budget And so you will receive a budget tracking worksheet for the next time that we get together. And then our final session we'll talk more about the emergency fund philosophy, how far you are from that, and how much house you can afford or not necessarily qualify for, because those numbers are going to be different, but how much house can you afford if you're implementing the proper discipline. So that concludes what I have. And I think, Kathaleena, we have, there was great participation, and I want to make sure that we give away just something little as a giveaway for those who like Starbucks. We're going to give away 2 Starbucks gift cards. So if you can help me select 2
So this is what we're gonna
individuals
do.
who hung on for us, I'd appreciate it.
All right. So ladies, let's give Adrienne a round of applause. And what I'm going to do is just give me a moment. I'm going to tee up the spinning wheel. I will share the recording and we'll find out who the winners are. So hold on. Okay, I'm about to share my screen. So please confirm that you can see your name on the wheel. So kindly confirm that your name is there, because we want to make sure that everyone is included. Can you see your name? And you're welcome to just post something in the chat. So bear with me. Did I press enter?
I see some thumbs up.
See some yeses.
Okay, great.
You have
So
it, folks.
awesome. So we have, just confirm again, I don't want anyone, we have about 16 people on the call. So I think I can click one of these, but oh, great. So we're spinning the wheel now and it's going to stop on Jamie. Jamie, are you here? Awesome. So Jamie, if you would be so kind to post in the chat area your email address, and then I will email you if Adrienne is the card an electronic Starbucks card or is it a physical one?
It's physical, but we can do electronic. It's no worries. Just get the email address. That's fine.
Okay, great. Congratulations again, Jamie. Are you with us here? Are you still with us? Great.
She is there.
Great. Okay, we're ready to do it one more time. Is that true, Adrienne?
Yes, one more time.
All right, so the wheel is spinning, ladies. Let's see who the winner is. Is it Dewan Austin?
Yes.
Diane, it was almost you, girl.
I know, Diane. I thought you were going to get it. Dewan and Jamie, it's my pleasure to take from my budget so that you don't have to. Okay? You can enjoy a little bit of Starbucks. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. So I'm going to stop sharing. And before we close, is there anyone, oh, Dewan, don't forget to post your email address. And is there anyone in today's session that would like to just give us some closing thoughts on what you learned this evening? We're now at 7:57. Is there anything, and by the way, I put in a link. We would love for you to complete the post survey. So hopefully you're able to do that with the link that's been shared. And we'd love to get some feedback virtually if you don't want to engage in a conversation online. So the other thing, so are there any thoughts? I want to unmute and just share some thoughts about this evening's, the 2 sections.
Excellent presentation, ladies. I appreciate, the information that you shared, and I'll look forward to the next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was wrong again. Diane, it's funny. So, thank you. Everyone, let's give Adrienne a round of applause. And, the other thing I'd like to share, our next session is going to be next week on March 8th. And we recognize that some of you will be on spring break, but we certainly hope that while you're at the beach or traveling or all the fun stuff that happens during spring break, that you would consider joining us. We will have 2 presenters, and I'm happy to note that one of the presenters is in the room who's a real estate guru extraordinaire, Miss Rashonda Muldrow. So if you would be so kind to maybe make a few comments, and then we'll also have Jennifer McReynolds, who is going to be sitting in Atlanta. So Rashonda?
Okay.
Speak loudly.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited about the information that's being shared, and I hope that you find it beneficial and that you will come back again next week, because we're going to just take it to the next level and get even more information. And I'm just excited to be here. Thank y'all for coming, and invite a friend. Bring a friend next time. Bring a friend.
Yeah. So thank you. I'm going to stop the recording. If all hearts and minds are clear, we can wrap up this evening's session. Again, thank you to Nita McKnight for an amazing presentation in our earlier session. And thank you again, Adrienne. And especially thank you all participants for hanging in there for the time that we've been together. We know it's a lot to ask of you. And all of my colleagues, I see Dr. Phillips in the room, and Dr. Williams, I think she was here earlier. And anyone affiliated with Albany State, our students and our staff and our faculty, thank you for your support. We appreciate it.
Have a
So
good evening.
be safe and Godspeed.
Thank you, Dr. Monds. Good job.